that already set up? Like
there is a time bank website that has a software you can download to help you set up a time bank. So that's available. And I'm sure that there are local currency similar kind of opportunities.
Yes, I think you'd be amazed what 15 minutes on the internet would actually reveal. I mean, everything from YouTube videos on how to set up a currency, actual the accounting software is downloadable, as Kevin said. So I think you'll be very, very gratified after 15 minutes to see what you can actually do in your own community. A lot of the thinking has been done. But one thing I want to make very, very clear, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You've got to get into your community and really not do a push model, but a pull model. And what I mean by that is, oh, gee whiz, wouldn't it be great to design a currency? That's not the fervor to go into it. You've got to get into your community and find what are legitimately the unused resources and the unmet needs, and have the people want it, and that will propel it. And you've got to get into the issues of hyper-democracy. You've got to get into the issues of how to resolve conflicts when they come. So there's an awful lot of thinking to be done, an awful lot of dialoguing to be done, and again, you can create something that is absolutely unique to your particular situation. And I'm very excited to see what comes out of this conversation in terms of new designs.
I think that phrase hyper-democracy, hyper-democratic, is really one to keep in mind. So it's led by the community's needs and designed for the community. There'll also be a workshop tomorrow on another kind of banking, postal banks, to try to say, post office doing something new. Working in Roy, go ahead.
Gore intrigued me to ask this question about the credit union. And Ellen, this question is for you. Is there any mechanism within the credit union that we as a member, we can go and turn that credit union to the public bank? Is there anything like that, a mechanism to do?
A public bank is one that's owned by the government. So your credit union would not be a public bank unless the whole government bought the thing. But they could certainly model themselves rather like a public. Well, no, I guess you can't really. I mean, you can't. If you have individuals who own the bank, then it's a private bank.
Next question. White shirt.
Justin, you almost gave me my final excuse to move back to Sunnyside, Queens. 2 questions. What are the FDIC rules that you have to operate under or you don't? And the next one, have you actually written a model and a manual to do this?
So the first answer is every deposit onto the Occupy card, which will be the first financial offering of the Occupy Money Cooperative, will be completely FDIC insured. We're working with a regional bank. I can't go into too much detail about that because we're still in legal negotiations with the contract with our payment processor and bank and everything, but it'll be completely FDIC insured up to the full balance of the card, which I think is about $10,000. If you believe in FDIC, then you're safe. Beyond that, I can't guarantee anything. And then the second part was, I think I hopefully answered the second part as well, which is that we're going to be launching actually within the coming days, probably next week. We're going to hit the go button on a crowdsourced fundraising campaign, a Kickstarter campaign, to actually build the startup capital to make this happen. And then within a couple of weeks, hopefully around the time of the 2-year anniversary of Occupy Wall Street on September 17th, we'll actually launch the Occupy card and the cooperative. So we're in the very last phase of development here.
When I went over there, in Wisconsin, do what you just did.
Well, the idea is we want to create a decentralized network across the country of Occupy Money Cooperative chapters. Decentralized in the sense that we're not trying to create a single monolithic bank here. We want to give this toolkit to Occupy chapters and other groups all across the country to be able to create it for themselves. And if they want to move in a slightly different direction, then we're happy to do that. It's like open source. We don't want to consolidate. The whole idea is to get away from consolidating and centralizing finance, right? We don't want to recreate the monster. But we do want to give these tools to different groups. So in the coming months, I'm going to be, and other members of the cooperative staff are going to be traveling across the country to meet with groups in cities all over and have these same discussions about what are the nuts and bolts, how do we actually build this thing from the ground up, using the Occupy Money Cooperative as a launching point to creating local investment, hopefully even credit unions will come out of this as well. The Occupy card can be a tool of a credit union as well. So that's the idea.
Okay, let's keep going across. Next.
This is directed to Jackie and Ellen. Jackie, I think it might have either been in one of your books or perhaps a separate interview by Bernard Latier, where he acknowledged that the public banking option would be in many ways the best option out there, but he thought it was politically infeasible and therefore would get so much resistance that the complementary currency was much more likely to be successful. Ellen, you just made a case that the next time one of these crashes happens, that's the time to go in, but it's not clear to me how you get in and how you take advantage of that.
I don't think it's either or. I think both have to happen. And we've got to look at the money creation process and create money that is not created out of debt. And with complementary currencies and other types of currencies, you can actually have money that's backed by something. And I think that's very exciting. So I think I can't speak for Bernard, who's not here.
The mic
but
just
I
dropped.
would suggest.
The mic is off.
No, the mic is off. I can't, but I would suggest, it's off, we've got a dead mic. So, but I would suggest, I think that position will be rethought. I think, okay. Hello, great.
Switched.
So I don't think it's a matter of either or, we need both. We need lots of new community currencies. And what we talk about is a monetary ecoculture. It's not just one size fits all, but we have different types of money at different levels of society. So it's rather like a farmer who just plants one type of crop. There's a disease, and he's up the Swanee if there's a failure of the crop. But if you have a multiple type of farming where you have different types of produce, you can then weather the storm. Helen?
Don't like monoculture.
No, we don't like monoculture.
Well, we have the example of Argentina, where when the economy or the banks collapsed, they had the state or the federal, the provincial, and the local level. So at the local level, they had a very large community currency. At that time, it was the largest in the world. And at the provincial level, they did something like the bus tickets, where they were actually bonds, but they issued them to pay the workers and then circulated as money. And at the federal level, they issued the national currency, which was pesos, and they just issued them outright and paid for things. But what we're hoping to do, so you had all those models working at once. And in a number of countries where when you had a banking collapse, they would say, well, the banks have failed, and so we're going to take it over publicly, like Australia did that and set up a publicly owned central bank at the same time that we set up the Federal Reserve. I mean, there are a number of examples of that. But what we're trying to do at the Public Banking Institute is to we think if we got one model, like one state that would do it besides North Dakota. North Dakota is a brilliant model, but people say, well, it's only one state, it's small, they've got oil, it's not us, we can't do it now, it was done in 1919. There are all these reasons why people say it won't work today. So if you had one other city, like Detroit could do it, or Philadelphia's working on it, Reading, Pennsylvania, San Francisco's working on it, one model, and just showed what you could do today with a public bank, then it seems to me it would just be a no-brainer and everybody else would do it.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of blowback we can expect from Wall Street. These are such great ideas, but it's going to translate into a lot of lost profits for them, and they would take that pretty seriously.
It's very interesting. Why do you think Switzerland is such an economically stable country? Anybody? Is it something to do with their drinking water, problems at work?
Surrounded by minerals.
They work
hard.
They work hard.
They don't invest any more beyond their means, and they do one thing we don't. Guess what that is? Take one guess. Those people work together.
Cooperative.
We don't do that. do we change the way we're thinking?
I think she has a different answer.
So, yeah, I think what you're saying is interesting. It actually segues into, if you, in the 1930s, 17 businessmen got together, and they had all received a notice from their banks saying that their bank line of credit had either been cut completely or reduced. And they looked at each other and said, oh my God, what are we going to do? And they realized that they were trading with one another, and they were going to separate banks to get lines of credit in order to pay their bills to one another. So they set up a cooperative called the WIR, W-I-R. And 80 years later, it is the reason why Switzerland is so economically stable, is because when the banks aren't lending, conventional banks aren't lending, the WIR kicks in. So they created this currency, a complementary currency. And yes, there was some blowback from the banks way back in the 30s, but they overcame it because it was such a good service. This bank was a cooperative, it's owned by its members. And 80 years later, 16% of small and medium-sized businesses use the currency in order to pay their workers or take care of their invoices or whatever. So yes, there will be blowback, but if people use something and it's of high functionality to them, that will win out in the end, I would suggest.
Wasn't there a
Brazil.
currency in Latin America where someone was prosecuted money laundering?
Oh, that's the Banco Palmas. That's another long story.
Okay.
Another
It's a good
two-
story, though.
It's a
It's a
great
good story.
story.
Switzerland also has the Bank for International Settlement.
That's right. Okay, let's keep moving. The Bank of International Settlements.
The Bankers Bank.
The Bankers
Central
Bank.
Bankers.
The bank.
Federal Reserve or Federal Reserves. Yes. Go ahead with your hand.
Okay. All right, so just to follow up with some previous questions, because as we talked about, it seems there's a consensus that a good place to start is in your local community. There's a lot less resistance to change, and obviously no one wants to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of great theoretical writing and research on many of these issues, but as some people mentioned, once you actually get on the ground and with the nuts and bolts operation, then there's the challenge of fitting into the existing system, finding your niche, and fitting into the existing legal framework. So my question is, are there any communities in the U.S. that you would cite as models for these ideas such as local currencies, public banks, local investment, financial co-ops? Another one that I'm interested in is insurance co-ops.
There's lots of things for all those, so I'm not sure I pick one community though.
I want to give a quick case study, which was Occupy Sandy, the response to the hurricane. You might not think of this as an example of an alternate currency, but what we did was, in the immediate aftermath, you had a huge number of people in Rockaway, Queens. This was a very coastal region that were very hard hit by the storm, and they had the immediate need for a whole lot of different things. Occupy Sandy came in and used a very simple web interface to connect people who had resources with people who needed resources, identifying the specific things that people needed and then moving them there, physically moving them from where they were to where they were needed. In the time that we were doing that, somebody decided we're going to set up an Amazon wedding registry so that people could actually see what was needed. A lot of times in disaster recovery, people donate things that aren't needed, and it becomes a huge drain upon the disaster recovery teams, which have to deal with an influx of unnecessary items. The Amazon wedding registry was able to very specifically pinpoint the things that were needed. People could buy them from anywhere in the world, and then they would be delivered by UPS right to the hub and driven to where it was needed. It was an incredibly beautiful system for matching needs and resources. But we realized in the short term, in a few weeks, that we were actually undercutting the local economy, which had hardware stores and other places that very badly needed that business in the wake of the storm. And so I said, why don't we set up a local registry where we could actually identify the local small businesses, neighborhood businesses, that had things that people needed, and then people could donate directly to those businesses to buy the things that people needed, right? And we set that up and it was very highly successful. It kept the business thriving in a neighborhood that had been very hard hit, and it got people the things that they needed. Now here's the crazy point. This doesn't just need to happen in a disaster, right? You could envision in a community that's been hard hit economically or politically, like Detroit, right? Where people could coalesce their resources and their support on Detroit by supporting its local businesses through a framework like this, a local community business network that would actually provide the things that people needed. And people who are in need could come to local shops and register their needs, the things that they desire, and then those things could be matched with people who could provide them. This is a system that doesn't depend upon any politician. No laws need to be passed. There's no legislation required. Nobody needs to vote for anybody. All you need to do is plug into this system. And we have the tools. We have the technology to do it today. With innovations like this, like the Occupy Money Cooperative and many of the work that people here are doing, we can make that happen. It's just a matter of organizing it. That's all it is.
We're actually running out of time, so what I'm going to do is just take last questions, and if anyone wants to answer, who else had one question here? Go ahead. There's this one that's great. Great.
And then we're going to show the.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yes.
Can just anybody bank with the public bank of North Dakota?
No.
Who is it? Just
They can if they live in Bismarck. It's just that they're not really set up. They don't have branches. They only have one ATM machine. No ATM machine.
It's not really a consumer-focused bank.
Right.
I mean, it's really a place for the state to put their money, and it works with community banks to really get things done. There's going to be after this at 9 o'clock at 505 State Street at the Osaka House, a networking social. If you want to begin these conversations, people will be there for that. And we do have the opportunity, I think, to end this with what's going to be, I'm sure, an amazing and fantastic, long-awaited video. Four. Okay, it's coming down.
Dun, dun.
Okay, we're almost there. So close. And we can hear it
Oh wait,
so
the
well.
sound is off.
The sound's off.
On the YouTube.
computer. On the video.
These are words we don't often think about the economy in terms of democracy, transparency, fairness, accessibility, inclusion. These are words we've kind of forgotten about in the context of the economy, let alone banking. I think it's pretty obvious that there's something extraordinarily wrong with the banking industry today. The current economic crisis was partly caused by incredibly irresponsible behaviour of banks which lent and then had to be bailed out by the rest of us. That systemic risk has not been solved at all by legislation coming from Congress. And at the same time, rather more secretly, a lot of people are denied proper banking services. They're kept out of the economy and actually their full economic potential because banks exclude them. In Occupy Wall Street, a group of us have been meeting for several months to try to work out what would be better. And what we're now doing is setting up something called the Occupy Money Cooperative. And I think it's potentially revolutionary in its effect. The first product will be something called the Occupy card. It's a debit card that you can use to pay for things, to send checks, to set money aside. It could make a real difference to people, particularly those who are most vulnerable in the economy. Anybody can get the card, anybody can join the cooperative. It helps us get back in control of what should be ours, what should be for our benefit, which is banking. And its services will be a range of financial products, but they'll all be transparent, they'll be democratic, they'll be good value, and above all, they'll be available to absolutely anybody. We can have that kind of economy, we can have that kind of banking, and it starts with the Occupy Money Cooperative. This is a revolutionary venture, but we need your help to get it going. Thanks a lot.
It's a 505 State Street, 9 o'clock. If you want to join us, thank you all.